some interviews with people who were involved with the development of the Convergence Center, and who are putting together a website ultimately. I'm not sure if it was fully explained to you, but it's for Professor McClurkin's class, and we're just documenting the history of the Convergence Center, and we're creating a timeline. We're going to put up parts of the interviews that we're conducting. So, okay. Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay.
Sounds okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead and get started. Okay.
Where do you want me looking? At you?
Just, yeah, at me is fine. So thank you for joining us today. Can you give us your name and current role at UMW?
Yes, I'm John Morello, and I'm the Associate Provost for Academic Affairs.
Okay. And can you speak about your involvement in the development of the HCC?
Well, it was a long and winding road, as the old song says. I originally started just as a member of the group that was supposed to be part of the building committee. That was in March of 2008, which was when I was recruited for the position on the committee. And then the individual who was supposed to chair the committee, our former CIO at the time, took a job at another school. And before he left, he asked me if I would take over the job of being in charge of the building committee. So that happened in May of 2008. And then from May of 2008 until the building opened in September of 2014, when we had the official dedication ceremony, I was pretty much involved in just about every aspect of the whole project from start to finish. Okay.
And I know you managed web pages, tracking the progress and history of the building. Can you speak about that?
What about the web page part of it, or the sort of the history of the project part?
I guess both. Because you said you tracked kind of from the idea of it to the completed project, so that must have been amazing to see just this idea form into an actual building.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see how the sort of the concept changed over the duration of the project. When you start a construction project for the state, the first thing you have to do is to provide what's called an RFP, so that it's a request for proposals to architectural firms. And in the RFP, you have to describe what the building is going to be. And if you go back and look at the RFP, which is among the documents that you have, you'll see there's just a very general description of what this building was supposed to be about. And so along the way, we had to kind of think through and define and clarify exactly what we meant by a 4-story, 80,000 square foot technology building, which was really kind of where the whole thing started at the beginning. Why the tracking the progress of on the website was important was because the project changed over the course of its history and development, and we wanted to have a way of sort of keeping track of what some of those shifts were. But I was also hopeful that it would be a device for keeping the campus community informed about what the project was and why it was important. And I'm sure it'll come as no surprise to you that all along the way there were lots of students and faculty who said, "What, we're building a building? What's this building going to be?" Like, well, go look at the website. So we were trying to use that as a device for outreach to explain to everyone what the project was about. The idea of having sort of frequently asked questions pages on that website was to deal with some of the questions that came up in the early days. Like, a lot of students were concerned that their tuition was going to be increased because we were building a new building, and we wanted to address that head on. The students were concerned about the loss of the path that cuts in front of DuPont and Pollard over to Jepson, and we had to address that. And then we just wanted to make sure that a lot of faculty understood that this would be a resource for them.
And are there any particular features of the building that you think showcase its potential?
Well, I think the thing that matters the most to me is every time I come into the building to see how many students are there using it for all sorts of different purposes. All along the way, we thought this was going to be a building that would really resonate with students, and but you're always worried that you've sort of miscalculated and you build the building and it's a ghost town. And I've been very pleased every time I come over here. The building is still lively and active. There's students here all the time, taking advantage of a lot of the facilities. I'm very pleased to see that this room is no longer being used as a storage room. I mean, the last time I was in here, it's just boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff. And I'm like, when are we ever going to actually use the capability of the studio? And so I think it's great that we're having this interview. I've used the editing room next door myself, and I've seen other faculty and students have been making use of that as well.
Okay. And how do you see the building being used 10 years from now? Do you think it'll age well? I know there's panels that can be pulled up to add technology or take away certain things.
Yeah, and to relocate it. I mean, that was part of the design decision in the beginning, was to make the building adaptable. But the answer to your question, 10 years from now, it's going to depend on what are the technological changes between now and 10 years, and how would the building be able to incorporate some of those things. One of the interesting things we had a lot of debate about was that a lot of people said, why are we putting computers on the second floor of the building? No students will ever use them. Students have their own computers. They have their smartphones. They have their tablets. Well, if you look at those computers upstairs, they're pretty much in use all of the time. So sometimes the things you think are going to be technological innovations and changes turn out to be oversold, and sometimes the old ways are the best. So it really is going to depend upon where we are 10 years from now to see how the building is going to be different. I think the building is going to adapt and change just fine. But the test of that will be if we come up with a proposal to relocate some of those floor panels, or the glass enclosed conference rooms and collaboration rooms on the second floor. Those walls can all be relocated, and if we decide that room 210 needs to be smaller and we need an additional collaboration space, we've got the capability to do that without bringing in a bunch of sledgehammers and knocking stuff down.
Did the HCC turn out the way you envisioned ultimately?
It did. It turned out different from what my original conception of it was. Early on, we had an additional large classroom that was scheduled to be in the building, and then sort of, as I think you've seen with the timeline, we reached a point where we didn't have construction funding approved from the state yet, so the project took a pause. And it was during that time that we decided to move the writing center and the speaking center out of their locations at that time and onto the fourth floor of the building. So that wasn't an original part of the plan, but it was something that evolved later because we saw that there would be some good benefit in having the speaking center and the writing center located in the same physical space. So that, I think, has turned out to be a good thing. I really like the cluster of classrooms we have on the third floor. They're all different. The mobile glass boards that you can write on are pretty cool, and it's fun to come into the building and see students from computer science filling one of those boards up with code, or chemistry students with formulas. So I think that all works. We haven't really made full utilization yet of the classroom 329, which is the fully capable high-end distance learning classroom with confidence monitors for the instructor, and also to be able to see a class at another location. But there are some preliminary discussions of a department that wants to try and do something with that and beam a class from here to another location. And so, that's good that we're moving in that direction.
Yeah. And are there any other thoughts about the Convergence Center or anything that you would like to discuss?
I think if there's a disappointment, it was that shortly after the building opened, I think it was in January of its first year, some of the pipes and the utilities that are up on the roof froze, and we had a major water leak incident, not one, but a couple, and that damaged some of the equipment, which I believe has been replaced. And so that was good, but it's depressing anytime your brand new building has something like that happen early on, even though everybody knows that you're going to have a little shakedown cruise when you're trying to make sure that the building, everything's working according to plan. Designing a building's one thing, making it work is another. The other thing that I thought was really a good development for the building, and you're probably aware of this from your own research into the history of it, but this building was originally supposed to be put where Mercer Hall is now. Mercer Hall is going to be demolished. I think this building, and our architects made the case that the building would be less vibrant and less vital if it was disconnected from Campus Walk. And they were the ones that really proposed putting it in this location where it's next to the library and adjacent to the student center, because that was really the mission of the building, to sort of bring together student gathering, research, technology all in one place. And if you stand outside of this building and you look around, it really fits into the location. It doesn't look like it was shoved in a place where it didn't belong. So it just fits the landscape well. And that made it possible for Mercer Hall to be repurposed first as the place where the history and political science departments hung out while Monroe was being renovated, and now it's the new home of the psychological science department. And Mercer Hall is a beautiful building. So this whole part of the campus has just really shaped up and been dramatically transformed over the past few years, not only with the Convergence Center, but with the renovation of Woodard Hall for the College of Business and Mercer Hall for the Department of Psychological Science.
Well, those are all my questions, so we can...